This warm-up is a review of our last lesson when we started multiplying decimals by single-digit numbers. In this lesson, we'll be multiplying decimals by multiples of 10. So just as a review, we have been using a key to help us identify different place values. So a square is the ones place value, and a line is the tenths place value, and a dot is the hundredths place value. And the reason that we use these symbols is because of our base 10 blocks, where we say that one flat is one whole. It takes 10 of these to make a flat, so they're called tenths, and it takes 100 of these to make a flat, so they're called hundredths. And you'll also notice that 1/10 is made up of 10 hundredths. So 10 hundredths to a tenth, 10 tenths to a whole. Now, I'm only going to go over one of these warm-up questions. The first one is 1 whole and 3 tenths times 5. So that's 5 groups of 1 whole and 3 tenths. So I'm going to go ahead and make my 5 groups. That's 3, 4, and 5. And when we go to count them up, we keep in mind that if I have 10 tenths, it makes another whole. So I have right now 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 tenths, so I can definitely get a whole out of that. So I'm going to go ahead and cross out 3, 6, 9, 10, and replace those 10 tenths with a whole, because it's equivalent. 10 tenths is 1 whole. Then I can write my answer. I have 5 tenths, and now there are 6 wholes, so our answer is 6 and 5 tenths. With repeated addition, that's 1 and 3 tenths plus 1 and 3 tenths, and so on. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. Carry the 1. That 1 that we carried is the same as the 1 new whole that we made. And then there are 5, 6 wholes. And I also need to multiply 1 and 3 tenths times 5. 3 times 5 is 15. Carry the 1. And 5 ones is 5, plus another 1 is 6. And that's just our review. Our objective is to discover and describe a pattern for multiplying whole numbers by multiples of powers of 10. And we're going to either extend or modify that pattern for dealing with multiplying decimals by multiples of 10. So, we're trying to pick up a pattern here. 2 tens makes 20. 5 tens is 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. 12 tens is 120. And 33 tens, you could count them, but it makes 330. And students start to pick up on the pattern going on here, where anything times 10, if you add a 0, gets you the correct answer. So we move on to multiplying by something that ends in a 0 but is not 10, like 20 and 30. 2 20s makes 40. 5 30s makes 150. And 12 40s makes 480. 33 20s makes 660. It takes some time sometimes to draw the pattern out of students, and some of them get it more quickly than others, but the idea is that you multiply the beginning numbers and then add the 0 back in. So 2 times 2 is 4, add the 0 back in. 5 times 3 is 15, and then there's a 0. 12 times 4 is 48, 0. 33 times 2 is 66, 0. And if you broke it up, it would make sense. because 20 is 2 tens. So if 33 tens is 330, then this is twice as much as that, because it's 2 tens instead of 1 10. So when I multiply a whole number by a tens place number, I can just remove the 0, then multiply, and then replace the 0. We extend the pattern to multiplying by multiples of 100. So it's the same numbers, except now instead of 10 it's 100, instead of 20 it's 200. So 200s is 200, 500s is 500, 1200s is 1200 or 1200, 3300s is 3300 or 3300. And we see the same pattern here. 2 200s makes 400, because 2 times 2 is 4, put the zeros back. Or this is 200s would make 200, but now we have 200s that we're multiplying by instead of just 100. So this one would be 1500 or 1500. This would be 4800 or 4800, and this would be 6600 or 6600. So again, it's remove the zeros, multiply, replace the zeros. And you can extend the pattern to a thousands place number. For example, 12 times 2000. You multiply 12 times 2 and you get 24. But we're not multiplying 12 by 2, we're multiplying 12 by 2000s. So, well, 12 1000s would be 12,000. So twice as many would be 24,000. Or multiply the beginning numbers, then add the zeros. Add the zeros back in. So we're going to explore this pattern, but with decimals, and see how it alters the pattern, because it's not going to be exactly the same. Otherwise, this would be 1.20, which is the same thing. So there's got to be something else going on in the mix, because 1 and 2 tenths. Let's take a look at that. 1 and 2 tenths. Let me clear my objects so we can get a new idea. 1 and 2 tenths. And then if I just added a 0, then that would be 1 and 20 hundredths. Well, when I look at my virtual manipulatives here, and I break this up into hundredths, I see that 2 tenths is the same as 20 hundredths. I can count them. So just adding a 0 is not enough. Something else is going to happen. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my picture. So this is 1 and 2 tenths, so I draw that as 1 whole and 2 tenths, using the same key as before. Whole, tenth, and hundredth. So 1 and 2 tenths, I need 10 groups of that. And we're going to find some shortcuts later, so you don't have to draw all these pictures. But for right now, for this first one, I'm going to draw a picture. That's 5. Now I know that 2 5s make a 10, so instead of duplicating that 5 more times, I'm just going to copy the whole 5. Now what I'm going to do is start regrouping my tenths, because when I have 10 tenths, it makes a whole. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, so that's going to be a whole. So I add a whole. And that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, so that's going to be 10 tenths, which is a whole. So now I have 5, 10, 11, 12. Okay. So, what happened here, I see that I have the same numbers, but now there's no decimal. So that's interesting. We're going to see if that happens again in the next one. Go ahead and try it on your own. I'm going to pause the video and just draw it to save some time. Okay, so now I have 10 groups of 6/10, and I'm going to go ahead and start regrouping. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 gives me a whole. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 gives me a whole. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 gives me a whole. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. I have no tenths left. All I have is 6 wholes, so my answer is 6. And again, same digit, no decimal. So let's show this with multiplication. We get 1.2 times 10. So 0, 0. When I move to the tens place, I have to add a tens place 0, move over. And I get 120, but that's way too big because this is close to 1 times 10, which would be a little bit more than 10. So I have to add in a decimal place in the place that makes sense, and I get 12.0. Same thing here. 10 times 0.6. Let's 0, 6. And I need a decimal point. So there we go. So you just get this thing happening where the decimal moves. We're going to try the same thing but with hundredths. So this is 13 hundredths, and I could draw that as 13 hundredths, but we already know that 10 hundredths makes a tenth. So this is the same thing as 13 hundredths. Now I'm going to start using a shortcut, because what I notice here is that when I have 2 tenths, and I multiply each one by 10, well, 10 tenths makes a whole. So when I multiply this by 10, it's just going to turn into a whole. And when I multiply this by 10, it's just going to turn into a whole. So over here, when I multiply this tenth times 10, it should give me a whole. And hundredths are the same way, because if I have 1/100th and I multiply it by 10, I get 10 hundredths, which I can combine together. And that would make a tenth. Like so. There we go, tenth. So instead of drawing 10 of them and then crossing them out and drawing a tenth, I'm just going to say, well, 10 of these would make a tenth, 10 of that would make a tenth, and 10 of that would make a tenth. So I get 1 and 3/10. Okay. Now just to make sure that that works, let's go ahead and do it as the full drawn out picture with the 7/100ths. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7/100ths. But I need 10 groups of that, so that's 2 groups, 3 groups, 4 groups, 5. Once I have 5, I can just duplicate to make 10. Go. And then I'm going to cross out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to make a tenth. cross out 10 to make a tenth, cross out 10 to make a tenth, cross out 10 to make a tenth, cross out 10, and so on and so forth. So you can see that if I draw out the picture, I get the same effect. That is 7/10. And when I multiply, 0.13 times 10, that's 0, 0, move to the tens spot, and I get 130, but I need 2 decimal places, and 10 times 7 hundredths would be 70 hundredths, 0, 70 hundredths, and 70 hundredths is the same as 7/10. So once we have that, it gets easier to look at some of these others. Now I know from doing this one that 10 1 2/10 makes 12. But now I'm making 20 1 2/10, so that's twice as many as 2 10s instead of 1 10. So my answer should be 24. If 10 of this is 12, then 20 of this should be 24. And let's go ahead and explore why. So this is 1 2/10 times 20. Let me give myself a little more space here. Well, 10 of these would make 10. 20 holes would be 20. And rather than just draw 20, which will take forever, I'm going to say there's going to be 20 holes. 10 tenths would make a hole. But I'm making 2 10s. So it's going to make 2 holes. Same for this one. One set of 10 would give me a hole, but I have 2 sets of 10. So I get 2 holes. So I get 20 holes plus these 4 holes is 24. Okay, when I multiply, let's look at this as just 12 times 20, which, if you remember your rule, you just multiply the beginning numbers and then add a 0, and I represent that as, I go ahead and put my 0 down here, I know I'm going to need it, and then I do 2 times 2 is 4, and 2 times 1 is 2. Okay, so 12 times 20 would be 240, but we're not doing 12 times 20, we're doing 1 2/10 times 20, so we have a decimal in there to change our answer. Okay. And we do the same thing for this one. Now it's 6/10 times 30, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6/10 times 30. So that's 3 sets of 10. So one set of 10 tenths would give me a hole, but now I have 3 sets of 10 tenths, so I have 3 holes. And that's the same for all of these. 3 sets of 10 for that one, 3 holes. For this one, and for this one. So what I end up with is, again, 10 of these would make 1 hole, but I have 3 sets of 10, so I have 3 holes. So my answer is 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. Now, 6 times 3 would be 18. So if I set this up, this is 0.6 times 30. Go ahead and put my 0 down. That's 18. And there's a decimal to worry about. 18.0. Hundredths are going to be similar. This time I'm going to do the multiplication first. This is 17 hundredths times 40. So let's put my 0 down. 7 times 4 is 28, carry the 2. 4 times 1 is 4 and 2 is 6. Now we're dealing with hundredths, so I need hundredths in my problem, so it should be 6.8. But let's check. It's 1 and 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hundredths. And there's 4 sets of 10 of each. So one set of 10 would be 1 whole, but because I have 4 sets of 10 tenths, now I have 4 wholes. And now I have one set of 10 hundredths would be a tenth, but I have 4 sets, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4 tenths. And the same is true for all of them, so that would be another 4 tenths. And I'm going to start duplicating to save some time. That's too much duplicating. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just draw it. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, and then I'm going to cross out sets of 10 because I have more than 10 here, so I'm going to be able to make some more holes. So let me do that in a different color. That's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Add another hole. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And then 2, 4, 6, 8. So I have 8 tenths and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 holes. So I got the same thing as when I multiplied. Then there's some practice that you can complete. Kids start to notice that there are some rules going on here, some shortcuts that they can use. The rule that we frequently learn growing up is count the decimal places, and that is a perfectly fine rule, but I want kids to understand why that happens. So that's why I go through the pictures first. Hope that you found that helpful, and I'll see you again in the next lesson.